So I want to talk with you about the economy and how people are feeling, because right now there's likely a lot of uncomfortable conversations around the dinner table. You may be having one at this very moment, taking a bit of a break, and probably have to go back to it soon. I'll just say this: you are not alone. So check this out. It says 4 charts show who's feeling good about the economy and who isn't. So this actually breaks down by party. And long story short, if president of your party is in power, you say, hey, economy is looking up. If the president of your party is not in power, then you feel sort of down. And it's interesting when you look at this stuff because it relates to basically people have different experiences depending on what they choose to believe. I try to just look at everything, with the open mind and just look at numbers. And something like this is fascinating, right? So it says Republicans are most optimistic about the economy, although things are starting to sink a bit among 3 different groups, right? So Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. Now, this is not just isolated to Republicans. Like I said, it depends on who's in office in your affiliation. So I'll read it. It says, one of the biggest determinants of Americans' view of the economy is who's in the White House. People tend to feel better about their financial situations when their political party is in power, according to surveys going back to the Reagan era. The split has become particularly pronounced in recent election cycles, and the country becomes more polarized. So, when in doubt, when my party's in power, I feel better. And and it's all the other people's fault, right? You get the point. But you have the sense of humor about this stuff because, for me, there are some realities here with these things. That's why I just said just look at numbers. So here's another one. Households with higher incomes. Higher incomes generally translate to higher marks on the economy. So the more money you have or more income or more stocks, which will show you think everything is doing okay. And that's the right word. You just say you have a more positive view. It's a better way to put it. So also then people who own stocks, people with stocks are feeling better than they were in the spring. But this is where if the stock market crashes, which we talk about all the time on the channel, and then you lose, say, people in the upper incomes, things can get really ugly very quickly in terms of consumer sentiment. And that stuff matters because that affects your shopping, basically. So simple way to think about it is, if I'm not feeling good about the future and I'm not feeling good about my job security, I'm not going to go out and buy a new car. And if I don't go out and buy a new car, just for example, car or refrigerator or whatever, then that slows down sales at the car company and affects everyone. Here's another one, and this one was a bit strange to me, to be frank. The other ones I understood what was going on. This one's a bit strange. Americans under 35, young adults are feeling better about the economy than older ones. And even the article itself is saying, this is a bit strange. That was I'd like to hear from anyone under 35 if you feel like you have a different point of view than people who are older than you, say around the dinner table at Thanksgiving. And it's always good to have these conversations, right? Because oftentimes, if you hang out with your friends, it's most likely going to be similar to yourself, opposed to, say, hang out with the fam, at the dinner table, whatever, they're going to be different than you and have different opinions, right? So why would younger people, and I'll just show you, it says, economists say it isn't entirely clear why young adults are feeling more hopeful than the older generations, but say recent wage growth trends may offer one explanation. But, as a whole, because I look at these numbers all the time, generally speaking, I can see for most people that they're having a hard time. And I've been seeing also younger people having a really tough time finding a job. So this one's a bit strange to me, but let's read a little bit of it. It says, younger workers have also seen the largest gains in annual income as of August, of 5.9% as of August. For Americans aged 16 to 24 compared to 4.2% for all workers. So I guess they've gotten a little bit extra wages is what it says here. In addition, younger adults, especially those in their 20s, may still be living with their parents or relying on them for health insurance or other financial help. So that part might be true. That might be one explanation. More people are moving back with their parents. Let their parents worry about said problems. Now, regarding the family conversations, and I think a lot of people are going to identify with this stuff. This was in Market Watch today. It says, I'm burned out by the drama. Is it wrong to skip Thanksgiving dinner? Last year was fraught. And also says, I'm invited because at 55, I am the only single one in the family, right? I'd be curious if you guys are feeling this as well. Basically, the idea is if you felt uncomfortable last year at the holiday, party or dinner, however you want to call it, is it worth even going, this year? And I think a lot of people wrestle with these conversations all the time. And I'll read through their description. And again, I just want to say you're not alone if you're feeling this stuff. Last Thanksgiving was full of backhanded compliments and pointed remarks. Despite my best efforts to steer the conversation away from politics, it did not go well. The same snarky political comments leave me with a bad taste in my mouth. That and the undercooked turkey. Do I tell my sister and brother-in-law that the turkey was undercooked last year and could have given us all food poisoning? And all this is, I've experienced this around, all kinds of people. I'm thinking a particular couple that I remember way back when they were owned a coffee shop. And long story short, they would just always say these weird comments. They were way to the right, and they'd always just make this weird comments all the time. Like, to them, everything was always political. It was strange. And I know for those of you who watch political channels, you think everything's political nonstop, but not necessarily. Some things you don't have to live in that particular world nonstop. And for some people, they listen to sort of right where to say it. We'll call it this. If you ever lived in the rural part of USA, there's sort of like these AM radio stations that are filled with like really extreme right-wing kind of stuff. And people actually listen to this stuff. And I did it. I didn't realize how crazy it was. Once you hear it for yourself, you're like, oh my God, people actually listen to stuff. It's even way, way more crazy than Fox News stuff, which is crazy in itself. And then it becomes really difficult to have conversations with some people because they get so into that. So, and even in these conversations, guys, I may have my own point of views on stuff, but as I always say, I'm happy to have conversations in an honest way with people. And honest way is like literally, hey, we both come in with good intentions, and I just want to understand your point of view, and I want to look at facts and not just make up random stuff. So I when I read this, I can totally understand like the way they describe it is, you try to just go enjoy dinner with your family, and you got these snarky political comments, and they said the backhanded compliments, full of backhanded compliments. So for those of you who have experienced it with your family, you would know. Another description says, my narcissistic sister does not talk about anything other than herself. My mother acquiesces to everyone's demands, but seems to condone poor behavior in the process. And my nieces and nephews have never really gotten the time to get to know me, nor have I gotten to know them. If I'm being honest, mostly due to my poor relationship with their parents. I'm invited because at 55, I'm the only single one in the family. And, there's some situation out there where every family's different. First, every family's different, but there's some situations out there where, you may feel you have a sibling. It's just hard to talk about. It's hard to talk with said sibling, right? I read that and it's like, yeah, I can see that. And it's also a struggle too, because in my point of view, and you guys don't know, I was a professor for many, many years, we always want to be a good example for younger people, right? So, in these situations, even if say you dislike your sibling for whatever reason, don't fight and always be kind to the kids. And it's tough though. Honest, it's tough. Like say, just in a simple example, let's say the parents are teaching the kids all sorts of crazy stuff, and then kids are spouting off said crazy stuff, and you're just like, oh my God, I gotta spend all day biting my tongue. and when we have these conversations, it doesn't matter. It could be either side of the political aisle, right? If you're say a full-on Trumper and you go to more left-leaning household, you're like, oh my God, these people hate Trump. What do I say? I need to tell them that God, Trump, guns are the best, and you can't say anything, and they feel uncomfortable. So, and I just want to come a different point of view on this stuff, because I think we got to figure out ways that we can all get along. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. But it's tough in this hyper, divided world that we're in. Here's some more. My question is not so much how to navigate difficult conversations. Okay. I smile and grit my teeth and have another glass of wine. That works. But more if it's okay to say, quote, no, thank you, to invite this year. That's what I've done. My mother did her best to cajole me into going. It's not very festive, but I'd rather skip it and do Friendsgiving. Is that selfish of me? I've had enough. I'm burned out by the drama. Why force myself to go through this charade? Again, single sister. So I'll just say this. My wife, Yeji, you guys know on the channel, she'll appear. Definitely they've chosen to go with one side of the family when it comes to holidays and not really communicate with the other side. So in that regard, I mean, I think that happens with a lot of people. You just end up being more closer to some relatives and than others. I'm kind of in the corner of you don't need to go. That's my opinion on this stuff. And I actually write about this kind of things in my book. And it's not just relatives, any number of things. There's nothing, that you have to be force yourself to put in a situation where, it's going to cause you way too much stress than it's worth. And you got to drive really far to go somewhere or whatever, right? So, but at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. But it does become tricky if, for example, I can give you just a personal example from my life. There's and I won't mention names or anything, but I'll just say this. There are children in my family that I wish I could be more positive influence on. But it's difficult because you don't want to start getting involved with all of the family drama. And I'll leave it at that. And I think a lot of people can identify with that kind of situation. And you wish things were different, but it's hard. You can't do everything for everyone all of the time. But it's hard. And what can you do? And sometimes there's people out there, which is also difficult to have conversations with. They're, how do I want to say it? I don't know if I want to say mean spirited, but have a different points of view on the world, I guess you could say. I mean, what do you do? It's no easy answers for this stuff, and it's like just even having these conversations at all. Though I just hope it's helpful for you guys to know that you're not alone in these situations. So you can see my book on my point of view on this stuff, and I'll also give you another example. I mentioned my book because this is a big part of it, right? Is how to make it through this world and just stay positive all the time if you can. There's another one. This is from the other side. It's interesting. My liberal sister wants to school me on the, quote, real causes of inflation. Trump and the politics are off limits for Thanksgiving. What's left to talk about? Right. So it's a good conversation, a good question. So this is their point of view. I read your column and thought you might have a perspective. Even though it's not purely a financial question, I voted for Donald Trump, and my parents, for what it's worth, voted for Kamala Harris. Last year, I got a hard time from one sibling. My sister, who is a lifelong Democrat, wanted to school me on everything from the, quote, real causes of inflation, the pandemic, not Biden, according to her, to immigration. I am looking forward to this holiday. I'm thinking of being proactive and sending my family an email to ask what topics we should avoid. But if all the above are ruled a no-go zone, what's left? My sister lost 40 pounds over the last 12 months, and I'm 99% sure it's Ozempic. Can we talk about that? It would be weird to ignore it. Even Thanksgiving movies are part of political conversation. What's left to talk about anymore? Fatigued voter. And that's actually, this is actually, I think, is a reasonable question, right? And even if this is a person who, different side of the aisle than myself, say, I can at least say they're trying to make an effort to figure out ways to get along. And there are ways we can do it. And this is sort of where you have to be nice about stuff. And sometimes even if I agree with someone to say this person's complaining about the liberal sister who wants to school you, right? It can happen. It can totally happen, right? Someone I agree with maybe could come down a little bit too condescending, a little bit too mean. And you can accuse me of that as well. It's hard because and it's like I always say the same thing on the channel. I try my best to be nice. When just for example, let's say there's a group of people out there that just don't know. And so what word do you use? Do you use the word ignorant? Do you use the word stupid? Do you use the word, information gap? Well, how do you describe this thing? And it becomes really, really frustrating to have honest conversation about this stuff because you're dealing very sensitive topics, right? And so that's why I always say just have honest conversations about said things with people. Sometimes people are so ingrained in their beliefs, it's hard to do that. So just avoid the topics is the best. And now let me give you an example, which is a true story. So last time was a holiday with my wife's family. One of my wife's aunts, it would be an aunt, was talking about how much she loves movies, and I actually like Korean stuff. And lately, I have movies I recommend on the channel all the time. I'll just mention real quick. 12/12 The Day. It's a must see, especially now. It's about a military coup in Korea. It was a biggest box office hit in Korea. I think it was last year. 12/12 The Day. It's exactly what you've seen with the Trump stuff. Just check it out. Also, the 1987, both fantastic movies. This is probably my favorite Korean movie, and it's sort of when do regular people decide that they want to better the country and fight for democracy. So I mention these things is because, say you watch a historical movie like, say, 1987 or 12th Day, which takes place like in the 70s, I think is what it was. Remember the exact year. But you're always curious, like what did older people think about that stuff? And that's something that, for me, I've always, it's just my curious mind. I've always talked to older people, like, what do you think about Nixon? What do you think about, Vietnam? What do you think about the moon landing? Whatever. What do you think about Kennedy, being shot? Like a number of things. And it's always a different perspective to hear someone who lived through it, right? Because they're going to have a different version than, say, what you learn in school or, what you read about in books, because it's just going to be different. And it was funny because when I asked them about this kind of stuff, the one aunt who claimed that she likes movies and stuff like that, she's like, "Oh, I didn't see that one." It's like the biggest box office hit, and it was funny because based on this, be frank, they're all like really, not all, but the couple of the aunts and uncles, and the uncles in particular, like really kind of right wing people. And in Korea, we have sort of basically your MAGA kind of nutso people as well. And it was strange to see them get so emotional about said stuff. It was really bizarre because I was asking one of the uncles about sort of like a financial meltdown, what was going on with that. And, I had just watched a documentary, which is like kind of just lays out the facts. And I was just kind of curious what their thoughts. And it's like one side just gets like really, really angry. And it was such a fascinating thing to see because I came in neutral as a, neutral meaning that, I'm not Korean, not at all, right? Like as a, literally just curious, like to learn the history at all. And, these kind of things that say your experience right now in USA is not just USA. You can go to any number of places around the world. I'll give you a simple example. I promise you, I bet in England right now, right, in UK, however you want to call it, I'm sure Brexit is the most like really divisive topic out there. And I can just imagine the uncomfortable conversations around the dinner table around that, right? I'm sure, for those of you in UK, that kind of stuff. And, this year, this holiday season, I guess the first advice would be just don't get in fights. It's not worth it, especially if, family members, that kind of stuff. That's my opinion on that. And, avoid that kind of stuff. But I don't claim to have all the answers on this one, but just when it involves kids, I think my best advice though is just always remember that people emulate what they see, especially young people. They emulate everything they hear and see. So sometimes if a kid says like whacked out things, it's not coming from the kid. They're just mimicking whatever their parents say. And you just always want to show that there's, a better way. So you kind of got to be careful with the stuff you say, right? We'll just say this: not everyone lives in like negative, sphere nonstop and screams and hollers nonstop. My wife and I, we share our lives with you on the vlog channel. You'll see. When I go through news with you guys every day, I just want to know the reality of what's going on, and that's why I look at stuff all the time, and I think unfortunately there's not a lot of people out there that want to have honest conversations about reality. And it becomes really tough. So that's what I just want to share with you. If you identify with kind of these types of conversations and stresses you have during the holiday season, I want to hear. I want to hear how you handle it and how it's going on with you. So do appreciate your time, everyone. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.